Today we are going to ask several questions relating to Black Hebrews, the African Americans, the Africans scattered around the world. Are they Hebrews? And what is the implication for end times? And for us to answer the question, we have to look at the Bible, because the Bible is the history book for the Black Hebrews. Let's probably start with Joseph, who was enslaved in Egypt. Joseph was in Egypt, and Egypt was a black nation. The historian Herodotus has written that in his days the people of Egypt had dark skin and had woolly hair. So Egypt was a black nation at the time that Joseph went there. It's very clear that Joseph married an Egyptian woman and had 2 children with her, Ephraim and Manasseh. If you read Genesis chapter 48, Jacob, when he came to Egypt, he blessed his children, and he blessed the children of Joseph, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born by an Egyptian woman in Egypt. Let's look at Moses. Moses married Zipporah, who was a Cushite, an Ethiopian. Moses prayed to God for a wife, and God helped him to get a wife. He married an Ethiopian woman. You know the story. And let's look at Solomon, King Solomon. His mother is Bathsheba. Bathsheba was the wife of Uriah, and research has shown that Bathsheba and Uriah lived in an area that were inhabited by black people. And so Bathsheba was a black woman. It was Bathsheba who gave birth to King Solomon through her marriage with David. You also know that the Queen of Sheba visited King Solomon, and through marriage Solomon also had children that were black or African. And that's why historic records and tradition show that Emperor Haile Selassie of Ethiopia was a direct descendant of King Solomon. And of course, King Solomon is in the line of genealogy of Jesus Christ. And so we have established the fact that there was black or African presence in the time of the Old Testament. And also in the time of the New Testament, because Simon or Cyrene was a black man, because Cyrene in Libya was a black country. And it was Simon of Cyrene who carried the cross of Jesus Christ. So it was a black man who carried the cross of Jesus Christ. If you want to know more about black presence in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, read the book. The title of the book is Africa and Africans in the Old Testament. There's another book, Africa and Africans in the New Testament. The book was written by, well, the books were written by Professor David Adamo. Professor David Adamo, Adamo. Adamo is a Nigerian. I know him personally. His research was his PhD dissertation that he wrote in the United States. At the time that he was writing the book, his white professors were very angry. Some of them were very angry. They were angry that he was showing that there was black presence in the Old Testament. They didn't like the idea. They wanted to suppress that biblical information. If there were blacks at the time of the Old Testament when it was written, if there were blacks in the New Testament, how did the black people leave the place? Here we have to talk about the different wars, the various wars that occurred in Jerusalem. You remember the Babylonian exile captivity, when the sons and daughters were taken into captivity in Babylon, and there was a dispersal of black Hebrews from Jerusalem to Babylon. Research has shown that where Babylon was inhabited by black people. So it's possible there was intermarriages between the black Jews and other blacks in Babylon. When Jesus died, not long, Jerusalem was also invaded again, this time by the Romans, and the children of Judah were scattered. They moved from that area to other parts of the world, and that's how you saw the black Jews moving as far as Timbuktu in West Africa. If you want a good record of this, read the book From Babylon to Timbuktu. From Babylon to Timbuktu, a book written by Rudolph Windsor. Rudolph Windsor is an African American, and that book will give you information as to the scattering, the dispersal of black Hebrews from Jerusalem because of captivity, because of war, and that saw them moving and being dispersed to other parts of the world, including in Africa south of the Sahara. Historical records also show that the black Jews actually settled in Africa, particularly in West Africa. And there was a kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. The kingdom of Judah was located at the place where we have modern day Ghana, where we have the Ashantis. The Ashantis also descendants of the black Hebrews based on historic records. If you want to know more about this, that the tribes, the African tribes in West Africa are descendants of Hebrews, you have to read the book Hebrewisms of West Africa. Hebrewisms of West Africa. The book was written by Joseph Williams. Joseph Williams did research about tribes or ethnic groups in West Africa who are descendants of the Hebrews. And he compared the Ashantis in Ghana with people in Jamaica. As you will recall, the slaves that were taken from West Africa, Ghana particularly, a lot of them went to Jamaica. And there are places in Jamaica that have Ghanaian Ashanti names, and there are some customs that are similar to the customs in Ashanti, Ghana. So Joseph Williams has studied the similarities of cultures between the Ashantis and people in Jamaica who were taken as slaves to Jamaica, and there are similarities in culture. Also, he studied the similarities of culture between some ethnic groups or tribes in West Africa and Hebrew culture in Jerusalem, and has concluded that there are similarities supporting the idea that black Jews migrated from Jerusalem to West Africa, and they are descendants of Jews in Israel. So what the implication? The implication is that they are descendants of Hebrews who are black, who are scattered. They are scattered over the world, and so there are some prophetic implications. Number one, they will be regarded as prophesied in the Bible, and we have to remember that by the time Jesus comes, of course, there will be some people in Jerusalem who claim to be Jews, but who are not Jews. As Jesus said in Revelation chapter 2 verse 9, those who say they are Jews, but they are not. They are synagogue of Satan. And that scripture is very clear. The descendants of Jews are scattered, and some of them are black. They are scattered over the world, and they are in United States. We call them African Americans, but they are really Jews, the black Jews. There are some of them in the Caribbean, they are in Africa, and other parts of the world. So, of course, the black Jews are scattered. They are scattered over the world. This is Messiah Revelation Ministry. My name is Charles Quatin.